Good evening, everyone. It's time for Necromaniacs podcast. How's it going, Mike?
It is going well. What's up, everybody? Mike Scandata with you with Mike Hill. Necromaniacs podcast, as the man said, the horror podcast coming at you each and every single week. We are knee-deep in May. And, once again, I've been going to a lot of shows, Mike, watching some cool stuff, having a good spring.
It's quite balmy out, I noticed. Like, I have the windows open, and it has, like, this kind of balmy evening vibe.
Yeah. It probably because it rains every day now in New York and New Jersey. I mean, maybe that's something to do with it. Like, almost every day there's rain, and it's driving me fucking crazy. It rained again today. I think it didn't rain yesterday, but it did rain Saturday. It's just fucking so annoying. But yeah, man. Been keeping busy. I went to 3 shows in a matter of 2 days, Mike Hill, this past weekend. I went to the big New York hardcore extravaganza Black and Blue Bowl, called Sick of It All and Agnostic Front and Ignite and Murphy's Law on Saturday, which was a lot of fun. All the bands were great at the Brooklyn Monarch, the place that you played last November, Nuclear Assault.
That's a great venue, man, and I'm really stoked to see that there's all these killer spots popping up all over Brooklyn. Specifically in Bushwick, it seems like.
Yes, and then the next day was the second day, which had no redeeming social value. My brother Mark's band, Shut Down, which is all the guys in my band, The Last Stand, as well, and Burn and Madball. So that was another fun show. But after that, literally 10 feet away from the Brooklyn Monarch at the Meadows was a Terror show. And I love Terror, so I caught Terror right after that. And I don't think I've done a twofer since God knows when, man. A show twofer, so to speak, in a while.
It was cool. It was a hardcore bang bang.
Yes, literally hardcore bang bang. Yes.
But was the Terror show some kind of like after party affiliated thing?
No, it was a separate show and a separate tour, but they did something cool. With your wristband from the Black and Blue Bowl, you got into the Terror show for only $15 instead of $25. So I took advantage of that. Since I didn't have to pay to go see my brother's band, so got to support the bands. But yeah, they played with this band, Kubla Khan, who are from Texas, like metal, really heavy, metalcore band that the young kids dig. And they played with, what do you call it? That death metal band whose name I'm probably going to mispronounce, Sanguisaborg. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think that's how I would pronounce it too.
Yes. They also have quite a big fan base. They look like a hardcore band. It's like 4 very short-haired dudes, but they pretty much play death metal. And then this band, Pain of Truth from Long Island, opened up, and they're like, very popular new hardcore band. I mean, there was probably about 600 people at the show, dude. I mean, it was packed.
Nice.
Good time. Good-ass time. And then this week, Thursday, I'm going to go see Exploited and Cro-Mags in Queens.
Damn.
At this Greek hall, like that. The name is escaping me, but they're playing somewhere in Queens in Astoria. So that should be fun. I haven't seen Exploited in about 18 years, so that should be cool.
That's like a show that would have happened in like 1985 or something.
Yes, totally. And the punk band Total Chaos is opening. Interesting bill. Total Chaos, Cro-Mags, Exploited. Although I think Cro-Mags are headlining. I'm not totally sure. But yeah. And as far as the viewing front goes, I'm watching both the HBO Staircase, which was based on the Netflix documentary, The Murder Case, Michael Peterson case. And I'm also rewatching the Netflix one because that's how engrossed I have now become once again in the Michael Peterson, Kathleen Peterson murder case. Are you familiar with this stuff?
No. I haven't seen any of these.
You need to watch both. Honestly, you might Actually, almost watching the HBO one first is in some ways more interesting than watching the Netflix documentary
Okay. Well,
because, yeah, I don't know why I feel that way, but they're both extremely worth watching. The Netflix documentary is many parts, and the HBO one I think is going to go to about 8 parts, but they're only up to week 4. They don't plop everything out at once. They're weekly, on HBO Max
yeah.
for the most part. Um, and it's a movie based on a real case, but the Netflix one is an actual documentary based on a real case. But it's a very bizarre, singular murder of a woman in her home that may or may not have been murdered by her husband, Michael Peterson. And honestly, to this day, I am not sure if this man is innocent or guilty still. So it's weird.
Well, I'm going to have some time on my hands traveling.
Yeah, watch it.
So
Watch
maybe
the Staircase.
I'll check
It's
that
good shit.
out then. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What about you?
Well, I've recovered from my staph infection, which is nice. Before
Oh,
leaving.
that's what that was.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. So
Jesus.
I got one more day of antibiotics, and but it's all pretty much cleared up.
Staph infection. My God.
And so that's all set. Just getting ready for tour.
Yeah.
Watching Joe Bob on Friday, which is always fun.
Yes, I didn't even finish the other one. See, here I was complaining about there's not enough of them, and now I'm like behind. So that's pretty typical for me. But I understand Joe Bob covered a movie that we over here at Necromaniacs covered.
Yeah,
first.
and yes, exactly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the little girl who lives down the lane, and with Jodie Foster, Martin Sheen, and that movie, it's a rewatchable film for sure, man.
Yeah,
It's so good,
yes, it is.
so good. And then Housebound was the follow up on that, and
Cool.
yeah, so it was a cool like double shot. And this time around, I didn't fall asleep. Like a lot of times I pass out like around 12:30, and there's still like another hour and a half left with with all of his breaks and everything. So that was a lot of fun. I saw 2 episodes of a new series called The Essex Serpent.
Okay, yeah, you mentioned it. Mm-hmm.
So good. It's on Apple Plus.
Mm-hmm.
It has Loki in it, Tom Hiddleston.
Hiddleston? Mm-hmm.
And a redheaded Claire Danes.
I love Claire Danes, man. I'm a Claire Danes fan.
Yeah, and it's a period piece. It's a little bit, a slow burn. It involves a sea monster and
really,
yes,
a sea monster.
Yeah,
wait,
man.
I'm in. I think I'm in.
Yeah, and it's like, but there's also, it's like, just because it's like aquatic horror, there is like a little bit of like a Lovecraftian thing going on, I think, with like some bizarre supernatural shit that happens to the town as a result of the sea monster proximity is like causing all this stuff in the town. And it's just really, really well done. Like it's well written. The acting is incredible. The characters are good. Each character is really well developed. And yeah, I really, really dig it. And 2 episodes are up. I'm going to be watching this entire thing, so I'm excited about that.
That is very cool. Also, just want to get it out to the listeners. Mike's band Tombs is going on tour. Run down the cities, Mike. Let's do it. Let's get you some plugs.
There's a lot of cities on this. And it's like 4 weeks long.
Get a couple of them out there. Get a couple.
Well, we're going out with Origin, Abysmal Dawn, and Kilatoris, and it turns out that my long lost friend Art plays in Kilatoris. He used to be the Eric Rutan's assistant engineer.
Oh, nice.
So I got to know Art really well on the last record we recorded with Rutan. And he just hit me up like a few months ago when the tour got booked. He's like, I'll see you out on the road, and I'm like, oh shit, and so awesome. So yeah, we're starting in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Albuquerque, Phoenix, Mesa, Arizona. Well, Mesa, Arizona, and Phoenix are the same place basically. So yeah, Mesa, LA, San Diego, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, going up into Canada, Vancouver, Regina. got added at the last minute. I've always wanted to go to Regina, Saskatchewan, I think.
Regina. It's not Regina.
No, it's pronounced, the Canadians pronounce it Regina. So yeah.
Interesting.
Minneapolis, which I haven't played Minneapolis in several years, so that'll be fun. Some friends in that city.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it wraps up in Lawrence, Kansas, which is the spiritual home of Origin, even though most of those guys don't live there anymore.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then we're driving back home. So it's about 4 weeks long, and we'll be out there. You guys can go to Tombs Cult on Instagram, and the tour dates are there's massive amounts of discussion about that, and the flyers posted there. So yeah, we're excited about it. It's going to be good. It's like getting back to the way things should be before the pandemic. Touring,
absolutely, man.
Having fun, going out there, seeing people. The East Coast thing we did was great. But it was only 6 days long. So now we're doing a real tour, proper tour.
Good for you, man. I'm excited for you guys. Full support.
Thanks, bro. But before we get into the episode, though, I realized something awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So between our cartel of podcasts,
right,
we've got the entire week covered for you guys.
Yes, we do. Yeah, 5 days a week, people. Yeah. Yes, all
the way live, man. Starting on Monday, Horror Wolf 666. Tuesday is Into the Necrosphere. Wednesday is Everything Went Black, which is my podcast. I started this whole, kind of started doing that one first.
Right.
Thursday is this podcast, Necromaniacs.
Mm-hmm.
And Friday, in time for the weekend, thank God it's Friday, with Break the Apocalypse.
That's right. Yeah, we've got you covered. All the people you should be supporting, the podcast you should be listening to, and checking the hell out. And if you have found us through any of them, thank you so much. That's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. Another interesting thing is that, like, we had covered, Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane, and I feel like it's a movie that, if you're of a certain age, you probably had no idea about. And months back or last year, we also covered, Butcher Baker, Nightmare Maker, and then that appeared weeks later on Shudder. How about that? Interesting coincidences. I like it, though.
Or maybe not a coincidence.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
What's really interesting, though, is Shudder, their account does not follow us. However, there are staff members who work on Shudder, at Shudder rather, that follow us on Instagram.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they're we're influencing them somehow, but like
no, I don't think so. But I like the cool coincidences either way. I just like it.
Yeah, totally.
And it shows we both have good taste.
That's what
it really shows.
That's right.
That's what it really shows. We're tooting our own horn, folks. But yeah, check out all those podcasts, and thank you to the new and old listeners alike. Which brings us to tonight's movie. And as a shocker, a Mike Scandato, Mike Hill episode is covering a brand new film, right, Mike?
That's right. Yeah.
Usually we've been going a little old school with me on the show, but tonight we're doing a 2021 film / 2022. It was released in its native country in 2021. It has found its way here on Shudder as of right now, exclusively in 2022. And of course, we are talking about The Sadness.
Yeah, from Taiwan.
Yes.
Written and directed by a Canadian.
Who's and this is his first film. How about that?
Yeah.
Rob Jabbaz, in his directorial debut, written and directed by Rob Jabbaz. Right off the bat, gonna say something also that's kind of interesting. I feel like we've mentioned movies and we've discussed scenes in movies where either myself or Mike have said, hey, that reminds us of Garth Ennis's Crossed comic book. Okay. And finally, we have a movie where the director actually said this is inspired by Garth Ennis's Crossed comic book. And of course, we're talking about The Sadness. So I don't know. I got a kick out of that.
Well, that's like the first thing I picked up on
Hmm.
before even reading anything about this movie is that this is like a serious. I mean, so much so that they need to cut a check to Garth Ennis, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny. What we're big Brian Keene fans here at the show, and we talk about him a lot in his books. And he has a book that came out in 2016 that I actually really loved called The Complex, which is also very Frost-esque. And I don't ever recall if Brian Keene said that he had read Frost first or whatever. Like, I'm not really sure. Um, and I'm just happy to finally see someone actually copping to being influenced by Garth Ennis's original work. So I don't know, getting a little chuckle out of it in a way. And sure enough, it really is, folks. If you've ever read Crossed and you watch The Sadness, it might be one of the first things that pop into your head as well. It's being called a zombie movie, and sure, it's kind of a zombie movie, Mike, right? But it's really more of an infection rage movie to me, right?
Yeah, and I wish that people get cavalier with this zombie term,
Yeah.
and it's let's stick to the technical aspect of what a zombie is. So there's no undead people in this. These are living, sentient human beings who speak and are just infected. Yeah.
Yes, at no point do I recall, having watched it literally early today, them dying and coming back. They get infected in the air, basically, and the fun begins, so to speak. And listeners, we're going to spoil this one, Mike. Right? I mean, it's kind of fairly impossible to cover this movie properly without spoilers, right?
Well, I think I'm with you on that, and
yeah,
but I don't feel bad about it, and you know why? Because this movie's not really about the story per se.
No, not really.
And in a lot of ways, I feel like they're setting up an IP. Like this is going to be like an intellectual property that's going to be appearing in sequels. That's my feeling about this thing.
Very possible. It's got an interesting buzz already. It's funny, Mike and I and our friend Rennie, I feel like we had an email about this months ago, right? Like there was that trailer, and there was a growing buzz on this film, and it's finally out now, and people are finally seeing it. And it seems like on the social medias, by and large, people are enjoying this movie. It is super graphic, folks. It is intense. It is not for everybody, right? Would you say?
It's definitely not for everybody. And it's not for everybody to the extent that my co-host at Everything Went Black, Ralph Schmidt, did not like this film whatsoever. He hated this movie. So, and he's a horror fan, but he didn't like this movie at all.
And I'm going to come clean. Before we start the show, Mike and I have our little prep pre-talk, check in before we get rolling, to be semi-professional. And I said, Mike, this was a good movie. I liked this movie, but I never want to see this movie again. And I also don't think I like this kind of horror anymore, if I ever really did. And that's kind of a big statement to make on a movie where I feel like everybody's kind of drooling over themselves over right now, Mike,
I'm on your side with this too. And we can get into some of the things I didn't like about it. But the thing that if you want to see a super graphic horror film, a lot of gore, really well shot, and, from what I can tell, really well acted too.
Yeah.
This is for you, for sure, man. It delivers on all counts. If you just want gore and, a good looking film, and there's moments in it of, of very intense moments in there, and it gets a little dark at times. However, for me, my reason why I don't like these films particularly is the slapstick element of it. You know what I mean? And there's films out there such as Evil Dead where there's slapstick moments, but it all fits. It's done in a way that appeals to me. And also the Evil Dead has like a very deep mythology associated with it.
And it's interesting. Some of the like accolades actually. It won like basically best new film at Fantasia last year in 2021. I mean, shit, you know, in the new flesh category for first features. And at the Fantastic Fest, best picture and best director in the horror competition. And Rue Morgue said it's the most violent and depraved zombie movie ever made. It's not a zombie movie, but anyway,
it is pretty depraved though.
It is depraved,
yes,
and it is violent. Yes. Yeah. But again, something I'm coming out with right out of the gate. I don't know if it's my age. I don't know if it's just who I am now. I don't care for violence and OTT gore and OTT shock stuff for the sake of it, for just like throw it against the wall kind of. And that's a lot of this movie, right? Like there's not a lot of, you know, storytelling. You know what I'm saying? There's not, and I don't even know if this movie has much of a message. There are very interesting COVID-esque messages in this movie that I did like, though. Did you catch that? I'm sure.
Well, yeah,
you did.
It's pretty heavy-handed in the beginning. There's like the idea of like you know, conspiracy and like, you know, fake news and overreaction and claims that no one's getting sick, like that. Just very much, you know, reflective of the last 2 years of the pandemic.
Yeah, and I actually liked that. The first 15 minutes of this movie, I liked a lot, because you meet these two particular characters, Jim and Kat. They're boyfriend and girlfriend, you know, young couple. They live together, and, you know, they're going to work, and, you know, and there's the news in the background about what is called the Alvin virus. It's not the, you know, the COVID virus. It's the Alvid virus, which is apparently relatively benign. And, you know, it's interesting. It's like one of the first true, I'm going to call it, post-COVID movies, Mike, for horror that I've seen.
Yeah,
really. Well, there was that one that took place in COVID. That one that was kind of like it took place all online, and the name's escaping me for some reason.
Oh, The Host.
Yeah, there's that. Okay, and then there's like this, and it's something I actually really like. But I tell you, right at about almost the 16-minute mark, man, this movie just gangbusters explodes, literally, right? You know, there's this scene, particularly in this like diner, and from then on in, if you're squeamish or if you're not down with this kind of horror, it's a 16-minute movie for you. I'm afraid, you know, because I have a feeling there are people who reach that point and are just like horrified, you know.
Yeah, it
hits hard.
It does, and it doesn't waste any time. It takes you to that point, and then it's off to the races. But you know, it's just a series of situations, really. I mean, the basic plot is like the couple gets separated. You know, the Jim is kind of like a freelancer film guy, I guess, right? And his girlfriend Kat goes to an office job. You know, she's like the responsible one, and he's a little bit of like a ne'er-do-well, I guess, you know.
Right.
But they're very much in love, you know, and they're a good couple, and they like each other's company.
Yeah.
Yeah, good people. So she goes to work, and he, you know, does his thing, you know, like freelance guy thing, where you go get coffee, breakfast, you kind of like, you know, hang around for a while, you know, and then figure out what your day is going to be like, you know.
Right.
And that's when things start popping off with the virus and this outbreak of maniacs, and they're separated. So the whole film has to do with cell phones, staying in contact with each other, and he's trying to get back to her so that they can be together to figure out like what the hell they're going to do, really, you know.
It's interesting. There are interesting cultural things just kind of dropped in the movie, like the sexual harassment of women is kind of just really dropped into the movie, and like a woman on the train, and there's like this older guy who's creeping on her, and there's an interesting emphasis on that. But there is a point to that because that creep older guy becomes a key quote villain. Would you say, Mike? You know, he becomes a guy who sticks around and does some heinous shit.
Yeah, you know, I don't have a problem with having that in there either, because I mean that is something that, I mean, you know, you and I, you know, you're a native of Brooklyn, and I lived in Brooklyn for decades, and we've had women in our lives that have taken the subway and gone to work, and how many stories have you heard of that? You know, of like
many,
just some lady minding her own business, and some creep, you know, basically harasses her, like. And that was the harassment that this guy did was not nearly as extreme as some of the stories that you and I have heard.
Actually says, he goes, I was polite, because he was creepy, but there was no need to even give the compliments he was giving, and it was just unnecessary, you know.
Yeah.
And it made the cat uncomfortable. But yeah, he becomes a key villain. And something else I want to say. Leading right into a scene in this subway car, I'll kind of compare it to the infamous scene in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 in the bus, where everyone in the bus gets chainsawed. There's a scene, I think, in this movie that I think that Texas scene wanted it to be. Let's just say because the train car sequence in this movie is really like. I mean, look, man, I've seen a lot in horror, and I've been watching horror movies for years. I've watched the extreme shit. I've watched the August Undergrounds. You name it, I've seen it. But there were many moments in this movie, Mike, that had me scrunching up my face, let's just say. You know, what about you?
Yeah, because I think that at the end of the day, because similar to you, I mean, we both seen all this stuff. Actually, the August Underground stuff I got from you. You had, literally, I borrowed your copies of that.
There was a time when I was seeking out, like, I'm just going to call it over the top, OTT, extreme, depraved nonsense. Okay. But that was about 20 years ago. And I look, people change and people grow. And I'm not going to shit on the fans of that horror, and I'm not going to say it's bad, but I don't know. I feel like the horror movies that mean the most to me are not those movies. Yeah, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's like same with me. Like, you know, you want the most extreme stuff, so you know we've gone to some places. You know what I mean? And frankly, the places that we've gone were like the seedier underbelly of the horror film world that are different than this film. This film is like respectable. You know what I mean?
Like, Mike, what's the movie with Gene from Angel Corpse?
It's an Unearthed Films.
The Unearthed movie. Stuff, right?
Yeah, the Unearthed stuff.
The Unearthed stuff is free of comedy. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
The Unearthed stuff, to me, what they're doing over there appeals to a certain horror fan, and is a certain 9.9 times out of 10 is a certain kind of product. Okay. I actually think they do that well. I don't necessarily like it, but I respect it. And I've seen a bunch of it just to kind of check it out. You know, that's not my horror bag. This movie has those levels, actually. It has those levels, but it's done in a way, like Mike said, if slapstick isn't the word, it's maybe Evil Deadish, maybe, you know, but to me, it does go darker than Evil Dead, Mike. I think this movie, like it's fucking flinchy, this movie,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah, definitely. And like those Unearthed Films, toe tag pictures, like those films, there's like a sleaziness to those movies that just, you know, like you feel like the guys who make those movies have, like, you know, taken human life at some point. You know what I mean? Like they've like,
or have someone trapped somewhere in one of their homes.
Yeah,
right.
they like have someone like tied up in the basement, and it's like these films are like dramatizations of shit that they've actually done. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I guess that's the point. It's like, you know, we've both gone into those places already, and to see like a well shot, I guess that's it too. A well shot, well acted mainstream film. It's just something that didn't really add up in my mind. And I wonder if like other extreme horror fans, I wonder if they feel the same way about it. Because I know that you and I both have seen tons of press, like, you know, like really praising this film. But a lot of it is all like fairly mainstream, horror press, like giving it accolades.
Yeah. Like it's almost like the horror press that would never ever give it a bad review anyway, kind of thing, in my opinion. But but the thing is, I don't know what the budget was. The budget is not on IMDb or Wikipedia. It didn't. It almost looks like a World War Z. Like it looks like it was a huge budget in Taiwan. This might have been something huge, and it looks great, as Mike said. The acting is good, but I don't know. There's just I feel like there are moments where it is trying to tell you something, maybe about perhaps the big government, perhaps about coronavirus, perhaps about, I don't know. But it all kind of gets a little lost and muddied, Mike, is what I think.
I agree with that. I agree with that completely.
Like you don't really know what they're trying to say, or maybe they're not trying to say anything. The plot is easy. It's an easy plot. There's this virus, and we have our two heroes, and they're trying to survive, and they're going through the maze, so to speak, like of the city, and they're meeting people along the way. Some horrible, some not horrible. You meet some good people, you meet some bad people. Pretty much horrific things happen to everybody. There's sadly only one person left standing, and it's not even the person you want to be left standing, and it's a bit of a downer, but as Mike said, it does leave open to the future, and I could see a sequel to this. I could see it.
I can see them trying to propel into this whole universe, really. Like similar to, just like in Crossed, where like Garth Ennis, there's like all these different miniseries and offshoots and different writers like taking that property and doing stuff with it. And that's, to me, that's what the ending of this film sounded like. Felt like there's like, okay, here's this world. We got this like crazy disease that's creating these homicidal maniacs that are running amok through the streets, and this is the world we have now. And what else can we do with it? Because it's really, as you hinted, it's not about the characters. Because at the end, we don't have necessarily any, like you get the sense that the story's over for these two characters.
Yeah,
and that this world has been created, this universe, and if there's going to be another film, they're going to take this intellectual property and put new characters in it, and then develop some other storylines. And I think that's kind of my opinion. That's like the end game of this whole thing.
Yeah. Just to kind of give a little bit of a rundown of some of the depravity. We have an orgy scene that we see, like a bloodied
blood orgy
scene. There's a very brutal car accident early on that you kind of see the impact of. You get, an umbrella right through an eyeball. You get an entire subway car stabbed up and bitten up and fucked up, and there's even baby stuff in the movie, which they do cut away, but I mean, it literally almost crosses that line of a Serbian film.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's maybe not 100% there, but it's fucking fucked up and dark.
And that's where Unearthed Films wouldn't have cut.
Right. They wouldn't turn away. Exactly.
Yeah.
They don't show a baby being murdered. They don't really show it, although baby is murdered. There is an eye fucking scene that they show enough of to probably make some listeners turn off the movie, but not really. It's they show enough of it to know exactly what's going on, right, Mike?
yeah, definitely. It's like a lot of stuff like that, like really uncomfortable things.
Yeah,
Things
a
that
lot of uncomfortable shit.
will trigger people.
And yeah, the Alvin virus, that's the name of the virus. The virus, like, Alvin from the Chipmunks, Alvin. At one point, we meet a character when our one of our protagonists, Kat, who's still alive at this point, she gets to a hospital. We meet this Dr. Wong character who is in the maternity ward of a hospital, and he's attempting to find a cure for the Alvin virus. And we get an explanation, right, Mike?
Yeah.
At this point, that the virus attacks the limbic system in the body. And Dr. Wong says the reason that the infected cry, because we do see some of them with tears, listeners, is that they are fully aware of the terrible things they do and are completely unable to stop them, resisting the urge to blink. And we kind of learned that Kat, we pretty much have figured out, is immune to it. Because the other interesting thing is that why so many people are okay, right? Like, a good majority of the city is infected, but obviously, we've got 10, 20 characters here who have not become infected, who have some kind of immunity, right?
Yeah, you get that sense for sure.
And we kind of assume that both, Kat and Jim are immune because, they're still alive in the movie. But, again, if you don't want to hear much more about the ending, you should probably tune us out and listen once you see the movie. But Jim does succumb to the virus, unfortunately, which is kind of a bummer, huh?
Yeah, because that's the other thing. A positive in this film is you're pulling for them. Like you want
Jim
them.
is pretty great, actually.
Yeah, he's cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
he fights them, like he fucking kills a bunch of them. He saves this one. Oh, another scene, my God, where these younger teenage infected boys are like torturing this guy on a basketball field, and they smash his junk into a barbed wire against a pole, and it's just really disturbing. And he thinks he's saved the guy by chasing them off or whatever and fighting him. And then the guy turns out he was loving it, and he says, why did you stop him? It's just like really and it's kind of funny. Like there are these funny lines, right? That again would probably not appear in any of the toe tag and unearthed shit, right?
Yeah, no, that wouldn't be in there for sure.
But this movie flirts with that. I'm going to say this movie does flirt with that kind of like unflinching, what the fuck am I watching horror movie stuff, right?
It's kind of like Whitechapel in some ways, you know what I mean? Where Whitechapel is not a death metal band, all right?
but to some they are.
To some they are, and there are moments when they'll do death metal things, but it doesn't ring true. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's kind of how I feel.
It's like deathcore. It's like the new deathcore genre.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
people like Mike Hill and I don't think that's death metal at all, but a 19-year-old thinks that's death metal.
Yeah.
And thinks Cannibal Corpse and Obituary are for grandpas. So exactly. that just is what it is, dad death metal. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that's dissing this a little too hard because this movie isn't a bad. Look, man. I think some of the listeners are actually going to love the hell out of this movie. So, it's not the deathcore of horror. I'm not saying that. No, that's not what we're saying here. Okay.
I agree that might have been a little too unkind to this film because I did like the movie, but it's like there are things about it that I was like, okay, I didn't really care for it that much.
It's just that, again, and it's people's tastes are people's tastes, and I've been a horror supporter and a horror viewer for so long that I've formulated opinions. I mean, hell, that's the reason Necromaniacs podcast exists, Mike, right? I mean, we wouldn't exist if not for these thoughts, right?
Exactly.
and sometimes our listeners agree with us and sometimes they don't. But yeah, Jim unfortunately succumbs to the virus, and he comes upon Kat and Dr. Wong, and Dr. Wong, he's another one. We think he is immune as well until he is not, because Jim cuts his foot open and like vomits into his foot. Is that kind of what happens?
Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
And he infects Dr. Wong. And then something weird happens where right before Wong dies, he professes that he found joy in killing the babies and that it felt so good. But Dr. Wong killed those babies before he was infected. So he was crazy already, Mike.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. Similar to like a lot of these doctor characters, like in Day of the Dead, there was the doctors trying to do experiments on Bub and everything. And that guy was like, he was kinky too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like this doctor was, not good.
Yeah.
So yeah, Kat is, they're trying to get to the roof of this hospital where they are with Dr. Wong. Dr. Wong is now dead, and Kat is being pursued by her boyfriend Jim, and kind of a bummer, kind of heartbreaking. She seals these doors, and Jim is on the other side of the doors, and Kat is crying, and then Kat just asks him how it feels to be like this, and he goes, "It's wonderful." And then he starts saying all this fucked up shit to her, saying that he wants to cut off her breasts and smash her face in and peel off her skin. And that's totally crossed, by the way. Yeah. That is like 100% crossed. And then he tells her that he loves her, and he's, and then something interesting happens. Kat starts to laugh and cry at the same time. And I was not 100% sure if that meant she became infected or she just went crazy. What about you?
I think that she broke, because we actually witness Jim becoming infected.
Yes.
And like he's on the phone with Kat actually.
Yeah. The tears and that vision. And yeah.
So it was very different than what was happening to her at the end.
True.
Yeah.
So they're separated by this like metal gate or whatever, and there's steps to the roof. And she starts running up the stairs after, while he's kind of laughing like a crazy person. And she gets upstairs, the door closes, and you hear her scream, and you hear like a bunch of gunfire. And obviously you think she's dead. And the film just kind of ends on Jim staring to the camera with the evil smile on his face, and he just kind of dies. It's a very dark, bleak, fucked up ending. I actually didn't think it was going to end like that, honestly.
Yeah, I didn't either. The tone of the film didn't lead you to believe it would end that way.
Yeah. I mean, again, Mike said that, possibility for sequels and a future in this movie, in this world. Absolutely. It would have to be with a whole bunch of new people, unless they keep, Jim around somehow or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it was a big downer. Not what I thought it was going to be, but maybe it is what I thought it was going to be after seeing the trailer. Like the trailer was pretty dark and intriguing from what I remembered from a few months ago.
Yeah, they didn't give away a whole lot in the trailer. You know what I mean?
No.
Like you knew there was like, crazy people and violence. That was really all you knew. Now, a couple of things here is the ending is reminiscent of two Romero things. Like even the whole thing with the helicopter and the roof reminds me of
Yeah.
And the fact that she got gunned down by like the good guys is Night of the Living Dead.
Yes. And there's even a scene, there's another Day of the Dead-esque scene with the security guard getting ripped apart.
Oh yeah.
There's a shitload of Romeros in this. There's some Evil Deadisms in this, maybe like, it's definitely got some callbacks to some classic stuff, which I liked, which I thought was cool. Being, loosely or not that loosely based on the graphic novel, Crossed is kind of cool. Although I feel like this fucking thing deserves its own movie already. And now it can't, probably, because of all these movies that have kind of ripped it off. But yeah, as we alluded to earlier, horror press, the horror world is pretty much drooling over this movie. Film Thread has given it a 10 out of 10. A genius propelling ahead with vicious force, full throttle, embracing and disregarding conventions.
So I find that
Um,
offensive because it is very much a rip of Garth Ennis. You know, what about Garth Ennis? Isn't he a genius?
yeah. Taipei Times called the film slickly produced gorefest, fast-paced action, not so subtle digs at the government and humanity. And on the downside, the Taipei Times, from its home country, said oversimplified plot and lack of attention to storytelling nuances and details. I get it. I get that. I mean, but I don't know. What do you want a movie like this to say ultimately? Like, or look, George Romero was able to say interesting things with horror, but I feel like when you get into this kind of extremity, any kind of messaging might be a little lost. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
And like we said, yeah, Rue Morgue, the most violent and depraved zombie movie ever made. Sure, but it's not technically zombie. I don't know. I think again, it only just hit what do you call it? Shudder days ago. But so far, everything I'm seeing, a lot of people really dig it. It'll be interesting to see if people like you and I liked it, but point out some of the things about it that are like, well, do we need something like this? Or is this genius, really? Is it genius? I don't know. And with that, my score of this film out of our Necromaniacs 1 to 5 is actually a 3.5. I was going to give it a 3, but I like a lot about this movie, and you definitely should see this movie. But ultimately, I don't love it, and I will probably never watch it again. So it gets a 3.5 from me.
Coincidentally, I'm giving it a 3.5 too.
Yes.
And I'll tell you why. My reasoning for that is that I thought about more than just myself this time around. And I definitely encourage people to see it because it is a good movie.
Yeah.
Definitely worth checking out. And you know what? Hey, this might become your go-to film for this type of thing. Like you might love it and watch it over and over again and, and get into all the sequels that are probably coming down the line, But for me, I'm not really that into it, really. I enjoyed it when I watched it. I don't think I need to see it again. And I may or may not, mostly might not, check out any of the sequels if they're coming.
I would give an award to the special effects. I'll say that. I would, if they're when they're up for any kind of awards for this movie in the magazines or whatever in the websites, yeah, it should get it because the blood was, it just had that very real look to it, and like that dark kind of. I feel like when the blood is darker, it disturbs me more.
I can see that. Yeah,
I get that feeling kind of when I'm watching the movie if the blood is of a certain color. Isn't that funny?
No, that makes perfect sense, actually.
I got that vibe as I watch this because anytime I get blood taken from me at the doctor's or whatever, I always look at my arm, I look down, and I look at the vial. It's dark.
Yeah.
It is dark in that vial. It's a certain color. And this movie had that color.
Yeah, they paid attention. There's a lot of intestines in this movie, too.
Yeah. A lot of Romeroisms, definitely, man. Yeah,
some brains. I totally agree. There's some brains, intestines, blood, viscera,
Yeah, but, you got baby killing, you got an orgy, you got an eye fucker, you got, junk smashing, you got it's pretty wild. It's a wild ride.
Yeah.
It definitely is a wild ride. But I don't know. It's a ride that I don't want to get on again, listeners. How's that? I don't know.
But on a positive side, it looks great, and there's some very interesting scene selections in this. Like, for example, and this had nothing to do with horror, and I don't know why I like this part so much, but I guess like when Jim in the very beginning of the film, before things really pop off. Like he goes down to this this deli, and the guy's like, oh, the usual or whatever, and he's like, nah, just coffee for me. I already had breakfast or whatever. And then someone else orders a meal, and then they focus on the preparation of these eggs and like tofu or whatever, like on the grill.
They did, yeah.
And there was something just really compelling about that, because it was setting up this like very normal everyday thing, but it had this very anxious feel to it because of that, you know?
Well, that's what I said. The first, literally, I checked it. It's about 16 minutes of this movie lures you in, and it does a good job of doing that. That's another reason it gets a 3.5, honestly. The setup is good, and you like Kat and Jim. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It just goes for like a personal taste for me, and I think it's just maybe where I'm at with my horror viewing, and you know, all that stuff. And if you notice, listeners, I didn't let it cloud me to saying it was a terrible movie or it sucked. Don't see this movie, you know? I would never do that.
Yeah, because there's definitely some films that I would do that too, but not this one.
Oh, yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I fucking hate that movie. But I want to say one more thing about this film in respect to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because there is that one scene on the subway with the cell phones. But in the sadness, the cynicism of that scene worked really, really well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like there was something just like, wow, this is our society. Like, we're just observers, you know? It was fucking weird.
No, totally. I mean, that was one of the best scenes of the movie, essentially. I mean, you know, the subway scene.
Yeah.
But
I think the guy even said, did I get the record?
Yes, did I get the record? That's right. He did say that. There are these weird little lines in the movie, you know, that you have to really pay attention to, but what some of the crazy people are doing. But check this movie out. See it. Read the Garth Ennis graphic novel, Crossed. Read the Brian Keene book, The Complex. And you'll definitely see some beats that are similar in all three, 100%.
Also, there's a short out there that Rob Jabbaz did that's kind of, and it can be looked at as a prequel to this, called Clearwater.
Oh, I need to watch that. I got the email. Got to read it. Got to watch it.
Rennie sent this out to me and Mike, and it's interesting. It could be a prequel. You know, it's like a short film, and or maybe it was used to get funding for this film because it displays some really slick like special effects and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know.
It's funny. Rennie has become the de facto fourth host of the show, and
he's like the producer or something like that.
And he's like a producer, kind of like a producer. He's behind the scenes, you know.
Yeah, it's a producer.
It's pretty cool. I dig it.
Yeah, we should. I think we'll post a link to the that short along with this episode.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That would be great. But yeah, that was the Necromaniacs take on the sadness, or at least me and Mike's take. Be interesting to see what Jeff thinks of the sadness.
I'm going to ask him if he saw it already, and we'll have a little, you know, we'll see, we'll mention what his thoughts were on this thing.
I know. He's hard to figure out sometimes. He may come away going, "This movie was amazing," or he may say, "I hated this movie as well."
I think Jeff would. I don't imagine him liking this movie.
Yeah, he's not. He might actually have the very similar score. Actually, he might
definitely.
You know,
or he might give it a 1 or something.
An infamous Jeff 1. Yeah. He gives ones out on the show. I can't recall the last one if I've ever given out a 1, but I might have. I just can't recall. You know, it's pretty funny. But yes, that brings us to the close of yet another Necromaniacs podcast, children. Thank you so much, Mr. Hill.
Thank you. And we're going to take a short break while I'm out on the road, and we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. So, you know, hang tight, and we'll catch you on the other side.
Yes. Thank you so much for the support. We will see you soon, Necromaniacs. Peace.
Take care, guys.
intentions lay, or does he even have any? She said he never really looks at me. I give him every opportunity. In the room downstairs he sat and stared. In the room downstairs he sat and stared. I'll never make that mistake again. Never pays, and everything she wants costs money. But she doesn't